The premise of this sermon is one that I have used at other churches before, and I can't remember if I've used it here or not. So if this sermon sounds sort of familiar, just imagine that you've never heard it before, okay? But this idea, I couldn't get out of my head. It's been running around in my head for a few weeks. The idea of the stone. How many of you, where'd the stones go? There's bowls. How many of you got a stone, did not get a stone on the way in? No, we're not going to throw them at the preacher. The choir has unique ideas to do with some of my props sometimes. I'm going to have to think this through. But hopefully everybody got a stone. And I want you to think about that because we're going to talk about the importance of what a stone can mean. If you think about the Old Testament and you look in at some of the stories in there, you'll find that some of the things that stones did were important. If there was a meeting between two people, they would often build a little stone altar or something there to remember or to mark that place. As the Levitical laws and things became the guiding force for the nation of Israel, one of the things that was important was that the priest not get within 4 foot of a dead body. To do so would make the priest ceremonially unclean. And so they began to pile stones up upon the graves of persons that died. So stones often had that kind of a meaning. They think that as time went on, eventually those stones became something that marked not only the grave, but at some point we think that somebody came up with the idea, let's put the name of whoever this is that's buried here on a bigger stone, and maybe the dates that he or she died. And so the stones became a way to mark the grave. They became a way to remember the person that was there as we began to engrave names on what we call a headstone or a tombstone. But within the Jewish culture, the stones had yet another meaning, and they would take a stone. I need one of the stones. You got a bowl full of them here. There we go. They would take the stone, and if you've ever been to a Jewish cemetery, one of the things that you will notice is that on the tombstones are lots of little stones. So if this was the tombstone, they would go and they would place it, and they used their left hand. I don't know why, but you would always place it with the left hand, and you would leave it on the tombstone when you left the cemetery. It became a way for, first of all, to show that someone had been there, someone had visited this grave, that someone had remembered this person, that someone had taken the time to make that stone of remembrance and place it there on the headstone. If I can find it here in my notes, there's a Jewish rabbi that explains it in another way that I really like. He says that the Hebrew word for pebble, it happens that Hebrew word also means bond. And he says when we pray the memorial prayer, we ask that the deceased be bound up in the bond of life. And so by placing the stone, he says, we show that we have been there and that the individual's memory continues to live on and in through us. You know, the church is a place where there's all kinds of memories. The church is a place where, you know, I move from church to church probably more often than some of you do. Some of you have been here. When did you come to this church, Phil? For a long 83. How long have you been here, Betty? Since 47. You've seen a person or two walk through these doors. You've seen a memory or two made. You know that there are certain places that folks sat. Mr. Gilly sat right back here in this corner. I can remember that. He's no longer with us. You can remember where your parents sat. You can remember things that happened. I can remember that right over here on a November a couple of years ago, they stood in their scout uniforms. We had finished with the, what's that scout thing, God and Country study that we did. And they were presented with their God and Country patches. I can remember times when David has been behind that pulpit and he has sang. I remember times with Andrew and, of course, the lighter. Always hoping he's not going to set the place aflame or something. He hasn't yet. You know, my memories are just less than 4 years old in this building. But some of you have memories here. Some of you remember the time when, and fill in the blank. You remember the time when great granny or aunt this or somebody there perhaps came up to you when you were as a young kid kneeling at the altar in prayer and said, let me pray for you that you can come to know Jesus. Some of you have memories of when your loved ones took their final trip through this church, and as the casket was opened up here in front of the altar and you said your goodbyes. And so within this building are memories. What I want us to think about this morning are those memories. I want us to remember those things and understand the importance of the stone, especially when we talk about the passage from 1 Peter here, because it talks about a living stone, a living cornerstone. It talks about the power and presence of Jesus Christ. You know, when Jesus was meeting with the disciples and asking them, who do people say that I am? You can reference my sermon from 2 weeks ago if you want to see what I preached on that one. Peter made his statement and said, upon this what? Upon this rock I will build my church. Upon Peter's statement, upon his confession, upon that rock, that firm foundation. Oh, there's a song, I lay in Zion a foundation of stone. Look at the songs we sing. Look at the scriptures we read. Look at what rock means. Rock is that thing which is not going to be moved. Which insurance company is it that has the Rock of Gibraltar? Is it Prudential? You know, what's their logo? That massive granite rock that I can go kick, or I can go take a chisel and start chiseling on, but 1,000 years from now, that rock is still going to be there because I'm not going to move it. It's a firmly attached to wherever the Lord finally attached that rock. We have a series of memories associated with this place. And what I'm going to give you today the chance to do is, if you listen to the prayer of communion in remembrance of these your mighty acts in Jesus Christ, memories in there all over the place. We talk about it. We remember. When communion comes around today and you get up out of your seat and you start moving, I want you to take that rock that you have been given, and I want you to find some place in this church that has a memory. It may be the altar. It may be the pew that your special person, my mom or dad or aunt or uncle or granny, sat in. It may be the name on one of these plaques on these windows. It may be whatever the special memory is. And this may be harder for visitors today if you don't have memories here. But those of us that have been here for a while have a memory of some moment that was special and in which we may have felt God in a way that we'd never felt God before. And it's important to remember those times, because Jesus is indeed a living cornerstone. He is indeed a living power, a living presence in our lives that does not end. And so I'm going to encourage you as you get up for communion, as you're moving around, move to that special place and put that stone down that you've been given. And I'm going to leave them there for a couple of weeks. I'll take them up before Easter, but I want that to be a sign of remembrance. Just maybe like in the Jewish cemetery when you go and place the stone on the tombstone to remember the person. Remember someone that indeed has made a difference in your life today. Give thanks to God for him or her and the leading that they have given you, and let this be a time to say, I remember you, and what you have taught me lives on. Just as Christ is a living cornerstone, the lessons we have learned can be living remembrances to help remind us of what it means to follow him and what it means to make an influence in someone's life in such a way that we would remember what they've done for us. So think about those things as you, I think you get the idea of where I'm going with that. Find that place that might be special, the altar rail, wherever, and and make that, for some of you it might be the kitchen. If you need to go place your stone in the kitchen, go place it in the kitchen. We are Methodist, There are some memories that come from that place. Wherever it is, while we're getting up for communion in just a minute, take a time to mark that memory and the importance of that person or that event in your life.